and welcome back. I'm Mr. Jacobson, and this is the channel where I spend sums of money on watches so you might not have to. Today we have the very striking and very powerful Seiko SRPC07, or colloquially known as the Samurai. I'll preface this by saying that I got the watch in exquisite condition secondhand, but more on that a little later. Let's do this thing. Pop the hood and you're greeted with the watch sitting on a black velvet pillow. Quite simple. I'm not a fan of velvet, but there you go. Let's just bask a bit in this very somber lighting before we move on to take a closer look. The specs are as follows. You have a 44mm diameter, which is quite sizable. 13mm thickness, which is also quite sizable. 48mm lug to lug and 22mm between them. It also sports a 200-meter water resistance, so you can most certainly scramble your brains underwater with this one. Usually at this point I would say that you get sapphire glass, but in this case I would be lying. This is mineral crystal. The watch is powered by the Seiko 4R35 movement. And now you ask, what is the difference between the 4R35 and the NH35? Well, nothing, apart from the fact that the NH35 is fitted into non-Seiko watches, and the 4R35 is for Seiko watches only. But Mr. Jacobson, what about the 4R36 that I've heard so much about? Well, that movement is also the same as this one, apart from the fact that it has a day-date function, while this one only has a date number function. And then you have the 6R15 that you can find at the Alpinist. Anyway, right, sorry about that. It's the heat. The SRPC07 can be described in one word, and one word alone. Striking. No wait, angles. Yes, angles. Because this watch is all about angles. The design is all about the angular, and there isn't a single angle in which this watch doesn't look fantastic. It's a very handsome thing, and I have to say that out of all the watches I own, this one has the most eye-catching design. We can start off by looking at the bezel. Hard lines, high contrast since the orange springs out. There's even the lume pip. And then we have the dial. More bright orange and black and white details. But the hands must be given proper attention. The hour hand has a very sharp kite or arrowhead form, and is very short. The minute hand is said to have given the watch its nickname, the Samurai. However, this is not a katana in any shape or form. Sword-like, oh yes. Katana, definitely not. The second hand is an arrow lollipop, sort of. Hard to describe. The hands have very strong lume, as do the applied indices. If you look carefully, the indices are a slightly darker colored than the hands, due to the lume paint. Overall, the watch is incredibly legible. The unidirectional bezel has some crazy action to it, and each time you turn it, you feel as if you're setting the timer on a bomb. The bezel also sits above the glass, which isn't domed, but so flat that it is basically recessed. The crown is screw down, and for a watch like this, it is necessary, because you're supposed to scramble your brains underwater with this watch, and have difficulty identifying colors, numbers, or barnyard animals. They say that orange divers are the most legible underwater, and I'm just gonna have to take whoever said that for their word. The bracelet is brushed and really thick. It's bulky. No nonsense. It has a click-lock clasp, and overall the quality feel is very high. It hugs your wrist, and is very comfortable. There is no taper, and for my own taste, that's preferable. It just adds to the serious overall wrist presence of this warrior. One important thing to note, and something that makes my heart sing, is the fact that this watch has drilled lug holes. I'm just gonna say it. Made of win. But we also have to look at what you're actually paying for. The details. The angles. Look at the lugs. Look at the crown guards. Look at the straight lines. Look at this side that seems to have an almost transformer-like quality to it. Almost modular. Whenever you wear this watch, you're constantly twisting and turning it just to get as many angles as possible. It's the most interesting in the Prospex line. Hands down. And here it is. As it sits on my 19cm, 7.48 inch, or 0.000944 furlong wrist. I cannot stress this enough. It has serious presence. If you want a discreet watch, don't bother with this one. This watch comes in a wide range of color options, and if you don't like the orange, then might I suggest the Planet Ocean one, with some very beautiful blue tones. However, I go for orange, because I just love orange watches. However, before you put this in your diving pipe and smoke it, I do have a few reservations that need pointing out. The first is that this model is actually quite expensive. It's usually in the range of $500 and up, and there's a reason I didn't buy a new one, because it's too much money. And the reason is you don't get Seiko's prime movement, you don't get sapphire glass. If you were to take the money you would put into this watch and look into a micro brand, you would most certainly get a Swiss movement and sapphire glass and all the bells and whistles that you can shake a stick at. Remember that the 4R35 is basically the NH35, and that isn't a movement you want to spend a lot of money on. It works, it's fine with its reasonable accuracy, but it's still run-of-the-mill. Think about it, it's in every clone and homage watch that you can picture. But take this as a comparison. For the same money that you could get a new Samurai, you could get an Alpinist secondhand. They have the slightly better 6R15 movement. So if you're deciding between the two, maybe the Alpinist secondhand would technically be better value for money. I think. No, don't quote me on that. So, can I recommend it? Secondhand for about $300? Absolutely. It's a hoot and two halves. It will make you friends at cocktail parties. It will work with a suit or a t-shirt. It will bring you happiness. And the $300 will not even be a remote memory after slipping this thing on. For retail price, you can find more interesting objets d'art. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'm Mr. Jacobson. Take care of yourselves, and we will all join up in the next adventure.